Hello. Today I am breaking down the anxiety I had this morning before it breaks me. This morning, this happened. Then, this happened. Then, this happened. Where's the milk? The milk? Where's the milk? Why is there no milk? Where is the milk? People run out of milk. People run out of milk all the time. And they go to the shop and they pick up a squatty little carton of milk of questionable freshness. Let's face it, corner shop cow juice isn't always the best. And they get on with their day. But today, for whatever reason, I couldn't do that. The anxiety about doing that prevented me. Now there's the realisation that I am going to have to go and get some milk, which means I have to leave the house and go to the shop. I'm frightened of those things. I'm getting hot and I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting that sinking feeling in my stomach and my chest is starting to tighten. My ears are fuzzing. My eyes are no longer properly focusing. This is starting to turn into an anxiety attack. I was able to see that I needed to calm myself down. I needed to break the cycle of those spiraling thoughts. They were very much out of control. What could I have done? I mean, there's loads of things. There's so many things out there. Anything from counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to take the focus off the chaos in the mind. I could have done the often recommended breathing exercises. I could have taken a breather outside. I could have rung my friend. All of these things would have broken that very stressful cycle of catastrophizing where one thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. What happens if I pick up the milk and it's wet and slippy? What happens therefore if I drop the milk? What happens therefore if there's a big mess on the floor and I have to ask someone to help me clean it up? I needed to stop the what if, the what if, the what if. There's so many what ifs. Can you hear me getting what ifed? Just thinking about it. I don't want to try and play the psychologist because I'm not one and try and explain how anxiety works. All I can give you is my own experience. These what ifs, they're not reasonable. They're just simply not reasonable. Number one, how likely is it that I would drop the milk and the milk would split and it would go all over the floor and then I'd have to ask someone to help me and I'd feel stupid? How likely is that? Not that likely. How likely is it that I was going to catch the plague from the man standing behind me who blew his nose on a slightly crusty tissue that had been in his pocket for 6 months? Not that likely. How likely is it that I would slip over when I got to the shop because the floor was wet outside and I'd end up flailing like a haddock on the floor in the middle of Tesco? Not that likely. How likely is it that when I came to pay, someone had defrauded me and there was no money in my account? How likely is that? Not that likely. I have no idea how many things could possibly go wrong, and it would be an infinite number with my milk trip. How likely is it that any of those will go wrong? I guess there is some likelihood, but really? Anything significant? Number 2, the question is, what if it all works out? What if it is all okay? That's really hard to think in the midst of this panic state. It's a really useful question to remember. Asking myself if all of this rumination is useful is a useful thing for me to do. I think there's a certain amount of preparation that is important. Have I got the right footwear on because I might slip is not a daft thing to say, but at some point I cross over the line into unhelpful thinking. It seems to me, and these are my own observations, that part of my worry about going out is that I worry that people are looking at me, that I have an elevated sense that people actually care. Honestly, I don't think, if I think about it rationally, I don't think that people care that much about what I'm doing. So I needed to remember that really no one is looking at me, that they will go in, do their shopping, walk out of the shop, and probably haven't even noticed me or what I'm doing. And I think I spend far too much time, an unreasonable amount of time, thinking about those fleeting interactions I've had. I needed to put those out of my head and move on with my day. I got the milk and I had a cup of tea and I felt better for it, but also quite impressed that I'd managed to do it. It wasn't easy. And it sounds so ridiculous that going to a corner shop to buy two separate pints of milk, it sounds ridiculous that should be so difficult and that it should have taken up so much time and energy. That's my experience of anxiety. I do my best for it not to be like that. I do my best to use what I've learned over the years to make the experience easier. The thing is, if you stay away from everything that makes you anxious, you are going to feel more comfortable, but I'm not sure that that's a win, because life becomes more limited. The more you stay away from things, the smaller your world becomes, and the smaller your world becomes, there are more things potentially that you can become frightened of. It isn't a win staying comfortable all the time. Going to get the milk was the right choice. Black tea, yeah, I would have been far less stressed, but pushing myself through was an important thing for me to do. After all, there's no point in crying over spilt milk. I always wonder who invents phrases like that.